Here's the full story about how President Trump cut $400 million in funding to Columbia University and how the Ivy League institution caved to his demands. In the spring of 2024, campus protests were dominating headlines. New York's Columbia University was the epicenter of the controversial demonstrations.
We're right outside of Columbia University, and this protest certainly not losing any steam. In fact, we're watching the crowds outside grow bigger right before our eyes.
It began on April 17th, when anti-Israel protesters took over the Morningside campus, erecting dozens of tents on the university's famous lawn. On April 18th, with the backing of the school's administration, the NYPD pushed in and made mass arrests, but the protesters, undeterred, once again erected their tents the following day with the intention of settling in for the long haul. In the public, there was backlash over the idea that entitled students were wasting their parents' hard-earned money by skipping class to protest. The huge price tag for tuition and expenses runs about $100,000 a year at Columbia.
Alphonse, your daughter must feel so supported when she's out there.
What's that now? when whose daughter is out there?
At the protest.
No, man. You bugging. Alexis Vanessa Roberts better have her butt in class. Let me find out she in one of them damn tents instead of the dorm room that I pay for.
But it wasn't a joke. Copycat encampments began to pop up at scores of other campuses across the country, where anti-Israel protesters clashed with Jewish students and police. At Columbia, things were also getting ugly. After the school suspended a number of protesters at the end of April 2024, demonstrators broke into Hamilton Hall and barricaded themselves inside. NYPD officers breached the entrance on April 30th. The cops had to cut, burn, and rip through layers of barricades, including mountains of chairs, trash cans, metal tables, and chains, in order to reach them. New York Mayor Eric Adams soon revealed that outside agitators were radicalizing students and that out of 282 protesters cuffed and hauled away during the massive NYPD operation, 134 of them had zero affiliation with the school. Hamilton Hall was also the site of another famous protest, the 1968 takeover by students to protest both the Vietnam War and the construction of a Columbia gymnasium in Harlem that the students claimed would effectively be segregated. But this time, there were charges of violence, racism, and most prominently, antisemitism. Two longtime Columbia janitors claim in a lawsuit that they were trapped inside and assaulted by the Hamilton Hall mob, who called them Jew lovers and left them injured, traumatized, and unable to work. One of the janitors, Mario Torres, says the assault came after months of being forced to erase so many swastikas on campus that he lost count. As an African-American man, he found the images deeply distressing. He reported them to his supervisors, who instructed him to erase the graffiti, this complaint alleges. Torres says the swastikas began to appear around November 2023, shortly after Hamas's bloody attack on Israel. On October 7, 2023, Hamas terrorists invaded southern Israel. They massacred some 1,200 people, including innocent revelers at the Nova Music Festival and children slaughtered in their homes.
A baby, an infant, riddled with bullets. Soldiers beheaded. Young people burned alive in their cars or in their hideaway rooms.
It was the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Sexual assaults were reported, and around 250 hostages were taken. The terrorists filmed the violence and reveled in it, posting their unspeakable deeds on Telegram.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
The Israeli forces faced an impossible task: how to fight an enemy which burrowed in tunnels under its cities and hospitals and treated their own civilians' lives as disposable. But Israel, which felt its actual existence was at stake, did not hold back. As images of leveled cityscapes and dead civilians emerged, anti-Israeli protests grew louder. Chants of, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which is understood to mean the call for the elimination of Israel, echoed throughout college campuses. They wore masks in solidarity with the terrorists and proudly expressed their support for Hamas. The college protesters' vitriol against a country that had come under a savage attack and lack of scrutiny when it came to Hamas stunned many observers.
It's just astounding to me that they can't tell the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, just morally. I mean, let me tell you, if you're for Hamas, just live in Gaza for a day. And I'm not talking about while the war is on. I mean, before the war. Trust me, you would go running and screaming and begging to live in Tel Aviv.
Their sincerity on the issue was further questioned when clueless protesters were caught in viral videos admitting to having no understanding as to what they were demonstrating against.
I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU is doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support.
Charges of anti-Semitism on the Columbia campus grew. Jewish students reported being ostracized on campus and revealed that they were targeted for wearing Star of David necklaces, and that shouts of "F the Jews" were made in the kosher section of dining halls.
The Jewish community at Columbia is alone. Many Jewish students are too fearful to report incidents of discrimination and harassment that occur both in and out of the classroom because of how little faith they have that the university will take the necessary steps to protect them. The university's inaction has left Jewish students abandoned.
While every American has the right to peacefully protest, calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students and the Jewish community are blatantly anti-Semitic, unconscionable, and dangerous, White House Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said in a statement at the time. The university's response was to hold remote classes as the protesters continued to dominate the campus, and a rabbi warned Jewish students to stay home for their own safety. On the anniversary of October 7th, the school banned business school professor Shai Davide from campus, supposedly for harassing students after he clashed with rowdy anti-Israel protesters and confronted school officials. And as the situation continued to spiral out of control, the administration announced they would cancel in-person commencement, which Donald Trump addressed amid his race against Joe Biden.
Now, it just came out, Columbia just canceled their commencement. Axios. Columbia just canceled their commencement. That shouldn't happen. And it also came out that the protesters, many of the protesters, are backed by Biden's donors. Okay, are you listening, Israel? I hope you're listening, Israel. Hope you're getting smart. But they're backed by Biden donors.
The universities were called out for hypocrisy by many, including academics on cable news.
I can tell you, if I went into the NYU square with a white hood on and said, lynch the blacks or burn the gays, my ID would be shut off by that night. And I would never work in academia again. There would be no need for the words context or nuance. I wouldn't be protected by terms like First Amendment or free speech. I would be out of the world of academia. It seems like we have a double standard.
And by politicians on Capitol Hill, where Republicans have long been distrustworthy of academia and the so-called elites at the universities they represent. In December 2023, presidents of the University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and MIT were called in for a reckoning. In shocking testimony, they failed to denounce calls for genocide against Jews.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking, specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
Ultimately, President Elizabeth McGill resigned from UPenn, and Harvard University President Claudine Gay eventually stepped down after a plagiarism scandal. Columbia's president, Minosh Shafik, managed to escape Representative Elise Stefanik's wrath that time, but soon would be called in front of lawmakers for a grilling in April 2024, where they questioned her handling of anti-Semitism at the Ivy League school while her campus was in chaos.
When mobs or people are shouting from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, or long live the infantata, are those anti-Semitic statements? Yes or no? It's not how you feel, it's...
I hear them as such. Some people don't. We have sent a clear message.
So is that yes?
We have sent a clear message to our community.
I'm not asking about the message. Yeah. Is that fall under definition of anti-Semitic behavior? Yes or no? Why is that so tough?
Because it's a difficult issue because
I realize it's a difficult
hear it as
issue.
anti-Semitic.
Shafik apparently didn't learn from the other's mistakes months earlier. When asked by Representative Kathy Manning whether calls to globalize the Intifada were acceptable at Columbia, Shafik demurred. I personally find it unacceptable, the president said, but added, our current rules have not specified that as not acceptable. She also avoided answering if she had any plans to discipline a tenured professor, Joseph Massad, who praised the Hamas attack as awesome and incredible.
When faculty behave in any discriminatory fashion at Columbia,
you talk to them.
There are consequences. No, we take them out of the classroom if necessary.
Is he out of the classroom?
From leadership posts if necessary. We allow students to leave those classes if they feel at all uncomfortable.
Is he out of the classroom?
He is. I believe, to answer your question, he is no longer chair of that committee and does not have a leadership role.
Days later, Representative Stefanik and her fellow New York GOP House lawmakers called on Shafik to resign over the anarchy on campus. As the leader of this institution, one of your chief objectives, morally and under law, is to ensure students have a safe learning environment. By every measure, you have failed this obligation, they wrote. While this rot is systemic, the responsibility rests squarely on your shoulders, they wrote. Some colleagues from the other side of the aisle agreed, with Senator John Fetterman posting on X, add some tiki torches and it's Charlottesville for these Jewish students. And to Columbia President Minouche Shafik, do your job or resign so Columbia can find someone who will. On August 14, 2024, she did. In a statement accompanying her resignation, Shafik wrote, "It has been distressing for the community, for me as president, and on a personal level, to find myself, colleagues, and students the subject of threats and abuse. As President Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. We must do all we can to resist the forces of polarization in our community. I remain optimistic that differences can be overcome through the honest exchange of views, truly listening, and always by treating each other with dignity and respect." But when the school year began again in September, it became clear that Shafik stepping down did not quell the division on campus. It was business as usual for the anti-Israeli protesters.
Chaotic start at Columbia University. Anti-Israeli protesters chanting for Hamas to resist until victory, vandalizing statues on campus and vowing to continue the unrest.
Along with the protests, Israel's war on Hamas has continued, and in March, a grim milestone was met, with more than 50,000 Palestinians killed since the fighting erupted. Also in March, President Trump decided to hit Columbia where it hurt most, the pocketbook.
The Trump administration is now canceling $400 million in federal funding to Columbia.
After the Trump team canceled $400 million in contracts and grants, it followed up with a list of requests Columbia had to comply with, or risk losing all its federal funding. Despite an uproar from academics and others.
What is it exactly that the Trump administration wants Columbia to do?
He's calling for banning masks. He wants complete disciplinary proceedings against some of the student protesters, wants a formal definition of anti-Semitism, as well as a reform admissions process, and a third-party review of their Middle East, their South Asian, and their African studies curriculum.
Here's the thing. These attacks on free speech, especially the one where they deported that activist, if there's one thing that I know about the powerful principals at our higher education institutions, they will not be bullied by a World 212.
Columbia University is bowing to President Trump's demands, announcing it will change a number of policies.
Among them, placing the school's Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies Department under academic receivership for at least 5 years.
Some students protested the war in Gaza. Suddenly, a whole academic department is on double secret probation with government oversight. And by the way, okay, Middle East part, African studies? What the did they do?
On March 21st, the university gave in, announcing that it would heed the Trump administration's demands and publicly clarifying that police would be authorized to remove individuals from campus and/or arrest them when appropriate, and that face masks or face coverings are not allowed for the purpose of concealing one's identity in the commission of violations of university policies or state, municipal, or federal laws.
Show your faces! Show us your faces!
You're proud of your message. Show your face. Show your face. Show me your face. You hate America.
Whether or not the school's administration follows through with its promise remains to be seen. The Wall Street Journal reported that Katrina Armstrong, the interim head of the embattled university, reportedly watered down the crackdown to anxious faculty in meetings, insisting that there was no mask ban. The Trump administration has not stopped there. On March 8th, a Columbia protester and graduate student, Mahmoud Khalil, was arrested by immigration and customs enforcement agents at his university-owned apartment.
Okay, let's not. Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand, he's not resisting.
The 30-year-old, a green card holder, is being held at an immigration detention facility in Louisiana as he remains locked in a court battle over claims he should be deported for allegedly hiding ties to the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees on his visa application. The arrest sparked more protest and a public outcry.
How many more New Yorkers will you detain? How many more New Yorkers without charge? Do you believe in the First Amendment? Do you believe in the First Amendment, Tom Homan?
It has since been revealed that the administration is also trying to deport a Columbia University junior, Yoon Seo Chung, who was charged with obstructing governmental administration and issued a ticket by the NYPD. She was arrested on March 5th at a Barnard College sit-in, which was sparked by the expulsion of 2 students who barged into a Columbia class on modern Israel in January and tossed around anti-Semitic flyers. Chung immigrated to the U.S. with her family from South Korea as a child. On March 25th, a Manhattan federal court judge issued a temporary restraining order blocking immigration authorities from detaining the 21-year-old. I don't think there is any evidence in the record that she would be a danger to the community, Judge Naomi Reese-Buchwald said in court before issuing the ruling.
No matter what happens in that case, it seems clear the Trump administration's vendetta against Columbia is just beginning.
We work with the Department of Homeland Security to execute search warrants from an investigation into Columbia University for harboring and concealing illegal aliens on its campus. That investigation is ongoing, and we are also looking at whether Columbia's handling of earlier incidents violated civil rights laws and included terrorism crimes. This is long overdue.